What is going on, guys? So today I'm going to be talking about the Army Reserves, and this video is specifically geared toward those of you who don't really know what the Army Reserves is. You're looking to join into the military and you're thinking about doing Army Reserves, but you're not really sure what the differences are, specifically pertaining to the Army Reserves. And in this video, I kind of want to give you that general overview from myself, somebody who's been in the Army Reserves for about 4.5 years now, to somebody else who is just thinking about joining right now. So this video is going to be a little bit like my older videos, where kind of like my theme or the point I wanted to get across in the video format was just like, it's just like me talking to you. So if you're somebody out there who comes up to me and is like, you know, what's the Army Reserves? This is kind of what I want to tell you, and then I want to answer a few potential additional questions that you might actually have about the Army Reserve specifically. So like I said, I've been in the Army Reserves for about 4.5 years now. Haven't had any like active duty time aside from real like training times, which has accumulated about 1.5 years of like active duty time. Came in as an enlisted PFC 25 Bravo, made it to specialist, or got promoted to specialist shortly thereafter, became a cadet, did ROTC, and then now I'm a second lieutenant as a 25 Alpha, which is a signal officer. And what I want to do for this video, there's my credentials or whatever. So what I want to do for this video is, I thought about, you know, you go to goarmy.com, that's where most people are going to go to try to figure out some answers aside from YouTube. YouTube is a great source of information, by the way. And they have several different categories here. They have serving when needed. What is the Army Reserves? When will I serve? Where will I live? What's the pay like? And do Army Reserves get deployed? Those are some general hitting points that goarmy.com hits, and they kind of explain some things. And I do want to kind of go through these and then put some personal experience on top of that, because we all know the goarmy.com site can be just very generic at times. All right, so the first point here is serving when needed, and the huge big difference between reserves and active duty is reserves is part-time, active duty is full-time. So active duty, if you're an active duty soldier, you're going to be out there potentially 5 days a week. Sometimes if you have an FTX, you might even go longer than that. If you do some additional training and stuff, it's going to be basically more than a 40-hour-a-week job, pretty much guaranteed. So you could probably average 50 hours a week. Army Reserves is going to be 1 week in a month and 2 weeks a year on average. That's really the bare minimum that you're gonna hit, and that is what you should hit every single year. So on the Go Army site, it says, when will I serve? You will spend 1 week in a month and 2 weeks a year in your training. Soldiers in the Army Reserve may be called to active duty to provide their expertise. Your total service contract length in the Army Reserves ranges from 3 to 6 years. I've talked about that before, but Army Reserve contracts are generally 3 years or 6 years. Now I do want to mention a key point here. It says Army Reserve soldiers could be called to active duty. It is rare, from my experience being in so far, that they're just going to like pick a soldier and send them active duty. I have seen that they have sent soldiers to different units that were understaffed. I have seen that, so that is something that's a possibility. But the likelihood of, you know, like let's say you want to do the Army Reserves, but then you're scared you're going to get sent on active duty all the time, that's not going to be the case. So that's a little bit of personal experience there. It's not going to be a very common thing for you to have to be, you know, sent on active duty orders for something that you do not want to do. Another question I get a lot is, where will I live? Some soldiers think, or some future soldiers think, that Army Reservists, you know, your housing is paid for and you're gonna live on post and everything just like active duty soldiers, and that is completely not true. So if you are active duty, you are going to get a allowance for housing. If you want to live off post, if you want to live on post, then the military is going to basically give you a place to stay. If you're below a certain rank, which I think is E5 or below, then you're going to live in what are called barracks, which are kind of like dorms, which are kind of like little apartments-ish. And then if you're married, you can get a home and things like that. But Army Reserve soldiers and National Guard soldiers, you're going to have to pay for your own housing. The military is not going to provide any housing for you whatsoever. They're not going to provide any kind of additional pay. The only exception to any of this in this video is if you are AGR, which is Active Guard Reserves, which basically means you are a reserve soldier, but you're active. Okay, so if that is the case, you're active in the reserves, that means that you basically get all the benefits of active duty soldiers. So there's a big difference. You have drilling reserve soldiers and you have active guard reserve soldiers. The only time that you will get extra living expenses paid by the military if you are in the Army Reserves or the National Guard is if you go on active duty order. So recently I just went to Bullock, it was about 4 months long, and for those 4 months, based on my zip code of where my apartment is, the military gave me extra pay to cover my rent expenses at home, so I didn't have to worry about that. And I believe you have to be gone for at least 2 weeks or so to get any kind of like partial BAH to help you pay for your housing. But in any other really circumstance, if you're just drilling, you're not going to get any extra pay. But if you're leaving where you're living for an extended period of time, then you'll have to fill out some paperwork. They should, basically prompt you to do that, because they should know in every kind of training scenario, hey, there's going to be people that need to get BAH, and then it should be really easy for you to do that. You just give them what they need, and then you'll get your housing paid for. So that is where you're going to live, and will the military help you pay for it. Additionally, one more thing that I want to say for the Army Reserves, unlike the National Guard, is in the Army Reserves, you do not have to live in the state that you're drilling. I know in the National Guard, I think you can live in like a neighboring state if you have some paperwork and some reasons or something like that, but in general, in the National Guard, you have to live in the state. Active duty, you have to live really around where the base is at, but the Army Reserves, you do not have to live anywhere near where your actual drilling base is. And that is the case for me. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I actually drill in Houston, Texas. So I fly all the way down to Houston, Texas for a drill. The military will provide up to $500 a month for your travel expenses. Currently, I'm going up pushing close to $600 whenever I travel, but my expenses kind of cover that just myself, and it's kind of fun for me to go to Houston. It's a temporary thing. I'm not going to be doing it long term. It's a weird scenario where, because I'm an officer, there's a lot more limited positions near where I'm at. So when one opens up, then I can transfer and come back to North Carolina, or at least the North Carolina area, which is another nice thing about the Army Reserves, is you can switch units a lot more easily than active duty. I don't really know how you could just say, hey, I want to switch a unit in active duty. I don't even know if that's really a thing. You're kind of just stuck with what you're stuck with until somebody higher up tells you to go somewhere else. In the Army Reserves, if you move, if you get a different job, or for whatever reason you need to move to a different location, you can start the process to actually switching units to get a unit that is closer to where you live. Now let's talk about the pay for Army Reservists. It says, what's the pay like? Well, and I'm reading from GAMIING.com here. It says, even though you spend a limited amount of your time on duty, Army Reserve soldiers earn competitive salaries. That word is a little bit misleading there, because a salary sounds like a yearly thing where it's like, a real full-time job, but because it's not full-time, I don't really think it's a salary. And then you have access to a wide range of benefits. That is true. And as a private, for example, you will make more than $3,000 a year. You'll receive health care, retirement, and educational benefits as you move up in rank and your pay increases. So yeah, one major benefit of being in the military is health care costs. Being in the Army Reserves and National Guard, your health care is way cheaper than just a normal civilian getting health care. And then it says a private here makes about $3,000 a year. That's pretty much true. And then for my example, I'm a second lieutenant. My yearly pay, I think, before taxes is like $14,000. So obviously, the higher rank you go, the more money you're going to be making. Officer side, it's even more so. But I think like an E5 or so is somewhere around $8,000. Don't quote me on that. I'm just going off of like a memory of what I think it is. So it's pretty good pay. It's not full-time pay by no means. Now the last thing here that I'm going to read off of the site before I go into some additional things that you need to know about the Army Reserves is, do Army Reserves get deployed? The answer is yes, but let's see what it says here. It says, generally active duty soldiers are the ones who are deployed overseas, while Army Reserve soldiers fill their positions at home. But there are times of great need when reserve soldiers may be deployed. So in that sense, it's saying deployed as in going overseas outside of the United States of America. Now this one, I'm a little bit, I don't know really what to say about this one, because it says here the Army Reserve soldiers fill their positions at home. So Army Reserve soldiers, when active duty soldiers get deployed overseas, reserve soldiers fill the place of those active duty soldiers. In my experience, have never seen that, right? I have never seen that. In my experience, I have seen all of us reserve soldiers getting actually deployed overseas. So I've never seen an instance in my career where a reserve soldier has filled the place of an active duty soldier. I have only seen it where reserve soldiers are getting actually deployed overseas and they're doing active duty stuff, okay? So whatever your job is gonna be, which is also a good time to mention that in the Army Reserves, it is all support MOSs. There's no combat MOSs in the Army Reserves. The Reserves is to support active duty. So we get deployed overseas, like I was just saying, and then you have active duty soldiers out there, combat arms people, and we are supporting them. So we're transportation units, we're supply, we're signal, we're different other support MOSs to support the active duty combat arms MOSs, okay? So there's no combat MOSs in the Army Reserves. There are some in the National Guard, however. Okay, so some key points that I want to hit on with the Army Reserves that you may be asking yourself right now, and it's something that I want to let you guys know. So a big hurdle in the military to overcome is that initial training, basic training and AIT. And this is especially true for Army Reserves and National Guard soldiers because you are part-time. Like in most cases, until you get deployed, your biggest chunk of active duty time is just gonna be that initial basic training and AIT. And then that's it. Once you finish that AIT, you're gonna come home and you're gonna go about your normal life. You're gonna go back to your civilian job. And then once a month, you're gonna go to a 2-day drill. Sometimes they can be 3 days, and sometimes they might even be 4 days. It will vary, but if they do that, they will give you months off. So let's say you had 2 months in a row where you had 3-day drills, so that's 6 days, and then that means that essentially you can skip the next month. And that's what I've seen for a few years. I've seen that sometimes there'll be 3-day drill weekends, so you'll have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then one of the months in the summer, you're gonna have that whole month off. Maybe it'll be July or whatever, but that's kind of the case for that. So that's how often you're gonna be drilling. And then as far as anything additional, so for me, myself, I did make the transitions from reserve enlisted to reserve officer. And because I did that, I've had to do a lot more training. So I've had to have a lot more active duty time than somebody who hasn't been deployed with my time in service. So like I said, I've been in for about 4.5 years, and at least 1.5 years of that has been on active duty orders. Now the last 2 things that I want to mention for what is the Army Reserves is when you go to actually pick an MOS, active duty versus reserves. I've talked about this in a past video, but I think I should definitely mention it in this video. Your list of MOSs that you can choose from are going to be a lot smaller in the reserves and the National Guard because it's going to be based on where you are currently living. Active duty, it doesn't matter. Whatever MOS is available for you to choose from, then you can choose from that. If you're in the Army Reserves or the National Guard, you're gonna look and you're gonna be like, okay, well, how far am I willing to travel to get the MOS that I want? If you're willing to drive 3 hours once a month, then your recruiter is basically gonna search within that radius of where you're at right now on an MOS that's available. If you're willing to go like 5 hours, then by all means do that. I'm currently actually going over 1,000 miles. I'm flying in an airplane. So again, I've got a little bit of a special circumstance for that because I do YouTube and I don't work my normal civilian job on Fridays, then I can just fly out on Fridays. So I have a very specific, like outside the normal circumstance on being able to travel long distance for my drills, so keep that in mind. But in general, you are going to be limited to the MOSs that are around you. Yes, they will come available, but it is up to the reserve unit itself to notify Big Army, and then they notify recruiters in that software of what MOSs are needed at that specific unit. And if they don't do that, then you're not going to be able to go there. You can't just go up to a unit and say, hey, I want to be whatever MOS, and then be like, yeah, sure, we'll take you. We'll throw that on our books that we have this extra MOS. Like, that's not going to be how it works. So the other thing that I want to mention that is a positive and a negative for the Army Reserves is you're not going to get that full active duty lifestyle, right? You're gonna get it every now and again. You're gonna get deployed. You're gonna be doing all your active duty crap then, and then you're gonna come back home. If you're wanting to be a soldier just like 24/7, wearing the uniform all the time, then the reserves or guard are not gonna be for you, because I've heard both stories of people joining the reserves or the guard, and they're like, man, we just don't do enough. We're not doing enough Army stuff. We're not doing a bunch of extra training that I thought it was gonna be. And then you have people who are in the reserves like myself, who are like, well, this is great. I can do extra training when I want to do extra training. I can do additional things whenever I want to, and I can do whatever Army stuff over here. And then, you know, at the end of the day, I can do my civilian job, and it's a perfect balance for me. So you're gonna be in either one of those two, you know, situations. Either you're gonna, you know, wish you had some more Army time, or you're gonna be like, this is a good balance of, you know, military and civilian lifestyle. And if you happen to be the person who is, you know, I want more Army in my life, okay? So this is where the positive could come into play, is you can join in the reserves or the National Guard and then switch to active duty at a later date. It's not gonna be like a one day you wanna be reserves and the next day you go active duty. It's gonna be a process. I would just guesstimate at least 6 months for you to make that transition from reserves to active duty, but it is definitely a possibility. So if you do join the Army Reserves, it's kind of like a backup plan. You can kind of join the Army Reserves, not being so sure if you want to do active duty, and then if you end up loving it, then you can switch to active duty at a later date. So you kind of have that fallback. Whereas if you do join active duty and you decide that you hate it and you want to get out, but you're stuck in that contract, now the rest of your life is really, well, not the rest of your life, the rest of your contract is Army 24/7. You know, it's your full-time job. Whereas a reservist, you know, you just got that 1 week in a month. If you hate it, if you don't enjoy it, then you can kind of grind through that weekend. The pay is actually really good for those weekends, you know, for those weekends, right? So we talked about the salaries before, but for a two days of pay for myself, again, I'm a lieutenant, I'm a second lieutenant, but after taxes, my pay is $550 for the weekend, okay? So it's $550 for 2 days. That's it, 2 days. So that's 225 bucks a day, which in my eyes, where I live, that's some pretty good money. Okay, so that is gonna be it for this What is the Army Reserves video. I tried to cover several different points. Obviously, I didn't cover everything that has to do with the Army Reserves, but if you do have your questions that you wanna ask, leave a comment down below, and maybe I'll make like another part to this, because I do wanna inform you guys as much as possible, especially for me. Now that I feel like I've been in the Army Reserves for a while, I have a much better understanding than 2-3 years ago when I started doing Army YouTube stuff. So leave your comments down below if you have any questions. If you haven't already, hit that like button, that'll be awesome. If you want to subscribe for more of my videos, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell button. That would be even better. Follow me on Instagram and Snapchat. If you haven't already, check out the merch store. This is one of my t-shirts right here. The link is also in the description or in one of the cards over here. I think it's right here actually. But anyways, I hope you guys have an amazing freaking day, and I will see y'all later. Drop.